All right, we're going to go into Module 9 now and talk about remote access. So we'll start with an overview of different kinds of remote access, and then we'll move into direct access, Microsoft's new product, and then we'll talk about VPN connections, which everybody's had for many, many years. So technologies for remote access have been around a long time. We had, dial-up connections with radius authentication a long time ago. And then we moved into the virtual private network connection. All of this in an idea to get us connected to the internal network. So people could access resources on corporate servers. They could actually access resources on their desktop computer at work, and file servers and application servers that they need. In order to do that, we wanted to set up ways to authenticate them before they connected, make sure they were trusted connections, make sure that what they had access to we knew was information and resources that they should have access to. And so various products over the years from NT4 on up to Server 16 now have been doing this kind of protection. So direct access, as provided through Microsoft, is a program that allows us to configure our end users' computers, and generally those will be portable computers, with configuration that allows them to be connected to the corporate network whenever they're connected to the internet. So no matter where they go, if they got on an internet connection, that connection will allow them to automatically, without any user interaction, connect to the corporate network. So that's what they mean by it's always on and it's seamless, because you don't have to do anything. You don't have to remember, oh, in order to do this, I have to turn on my VPN, or to do this, I have to make a connection to the office. You're just connected. Bidirectional is one of the selling points, and that is that as a corporate IT department, you have access to them. So you can do group policy updates. So anytime group policy changes and refreshes with new changes, those changes will be delivered to that remote client, even if they're in a Starbucks coffee shop. You can also do Windows updates. So you can deploy the Windows updates that are necessary to keep them secure. You can do other management things on their computer. You can do remote assistance into those computers to help them if they have problems. So all of that's available to you through this direct access connection. We'll talk more about the security that's involved, but we're using IPv6, we're using IPsec authentication with all of our communication, and they want to let us know that it's integrated. It's part of the Microsoft package here. We can still use VPN, and that is probably 90% of remote access today, is people are using VPN products. Cisco and the AnyConnect product, predominant in the industry as the top of the line, and people are very comfortable using that. But it does often require the users to establish connections. Now, Cisco also has some direct access type solutions as well. And so Microsoft is not the only one out there with it. And the VPN connection, again, encrypted with IPsec over layer 2 tunneling protocol, or however that's set up with VPN. So in order to do that solution on the enterprise level, we're looking at getting into the corporate network with remote desktop services once we're connected. We can also access resources with the web app proxy server, so we can get authentication through federated services or directly from the web app. We can connect up and with that provide the services we needed. With remote app, we can have apps running on servers on our remote computer, so we can do that as well. So cloud-based subscriptions, obviously we can use cloud-based Azure services like Office 365 and things like that. Azure Remote App has been deprecated, and in server, in Azure today, if you want to do remote applications, you will be given a Citrix application to do that. So Citrix has been partnered up with Microsoft to provide the remote application that they're famous for, and they've developed a cloud-based solution for that. that we can use. So it talks a little bit about it here, but that has been deprecated as of last August. Components of direct access, straightforward. It requires an infrastructure build, and we're going to get into all those components. We're going to need a direct access server. We're going to need a network location server, all right, that is going to really just provide us with a web page and web access, and how we get to that determines where we are. All right. So let me step over to this slide and kind of show you how it works. On the right-hand side, you'll see that internal clients at the top, inside of that large circle, have access to internal network resources. There's certificate servers there, DNS and Active Directory. But the first thing that's going to happen for an internal client, the internal client is going to make a connection to their domain controller and authenticate, right? That's the first thing they do when they start it up. Once they make that connection, they're going to look for the network location server. So there is this name resolution policy table that indicates the requirements for connection. And that policy determines what steps the internal client is going to use. So when they activate the computer, when they power on the computer in the domain, it will go through the process of the computer logging on to the domain controller, and the user then gets the logon screen. They log on, and the policy table says first thing you should do after you log on is see if you can go to the website for the NLS server, the network location server. That's the policy. So they contact DNS and say, what's the IP address of the NLS server? And then they establish a connection to that server. Once they've done that, the policy table says you must be inside the corporate network if that has taken place. All right. Kind of an involved way of checking to see what network you're on, but that's the process, and that's spelled out with the name resolution policy table. Now, when they check that out, they're also going to go and check the certificate for that web server, make sure that's valid, and then they complete their logon and they access the network resources as needed. All right. One more click. External clients. So now I'm outside the office with direct access on my computer. I still have my connection security rules and my name resolution policy table. And now I want to get on the internet. So I power up, I get on the internet, there's a coffee shop. Once I'm on that internet, I am going to try and locate the the network location server. So can I do that? No, I'm going to go out to DNS on the internet. The internet DNS server is not going to have an entry in DNS for my name network location server. All right. So I look for nls.adatum.com in the internet DNS, and it says, we don't have anybody like that. We don't know what you're talking about. At that point, I go back to my name resolution policy table and say, okay, they can't find this. What next? And then the next step for me is to look for directaccess.adatum.com or whatever the web URL is for that direct access server. So I find that and I make a connection to the direct access server through a standard tunneling through the internet to that IP address. And it's now going to process my request, which is traveling in a tunnel protocol perhaps. So it's an IP6 packet tunneling through the internet and wrapped in IP4 header. And it gets to the direct access server, it gets processed, and then it goes through the internal network to access resources from there. Once it does that, it authenticates to the domain and it gets a private tunnel to the intranet from the coffee shop, very much like a VPN tunnel. So once it has that, it's connected to the corporate network and it's connected to the internet as well. And so now it can browse the internet, go to websites wherever, and it can also browse the corporate network. So you must be looking at this and saying, wait a minute, that means that the internet has access to the corporate network. In many ways it does. So this is called split tunnel. You may be familiar with that in your VPN solutions. So the split tunnel says, while I'm connected, I can go into the internal corporate network and I can also use resources on the internet. This question's come up several times in classes because it's a concern for security purposes. And obviously, we have to have things in place in our corporate network to protect against things, and we do. There's some TechNet articles and white papers on removing the split tunnel, and you can do that so that when they are connected corporately, they are not able to access internet resources except through this intranet tunnel, which would mean they'd be going out through the corporate office to the websites that they're looking at. And that may be a choice. There's concerns on both sides. So the requirements in 2012 R2 changed, all right, and dropped all of the previous 2008 server requirements that made it very difficult to employ. So all we're saying here is that you have to be a domain member. If you're a direct access server, it has to be joined to the domain. It has to have one network card connected to the domain, must have a firewall enabled on all profiles, should not be a domain controller. It can be deployed on the edge of the corporate network. It can be deployed in the perimeter zone, right, behind one firewall and in front of the other firewall. Or it can be behind a regular firewall and use a network address translation. 2012 said, you know what, let's just make it easy, all right? And let's give a wizard. If we go through the wizard, what the wizard is going to do is assess your network. So it's going to check and see if your network is IPv6 or IPv4. It would prefer 6, but it will use 4. It's going to see how you get to the internet and what the process is to get out to the internet, and it will make adjustments in the case of a network address translation device. It will do this through two direct access GPOs, a client GPO and a server GPO. So once we deliver those group policies to the specific clients, we don't have to give this access to everyone. We give it to those users and or those computers. We can link it to a computer OU as well. The users and computers that are authenticated to use this new service, we have to put in some DNS settings for the network location server, and then for the groups that the computers are in and the resources that they have, we're going to set those clients up. We're going to set up the remote access server for the connection, and then of course we have domain controllers and DNS servers and certificate servers and all of the components to support this. The book goes on to say the wizard detects the topology and suggests the recommended settings, public name or IP4 address where the direct access clients connect from the internet is entered into the wizard already, and you can also define the network adapter to connect to and to the certificates that you'll be using. One of the connection types, if you are not wanting to do the tunneling with IPv6, is to use IT-HTTPS. So we're going to use a secure connection through port 443 to get to this direct access server. So some of the limitations here for the wizard based is you're using self-signed certificates based on the network location server design, and that network location server can be on the direct access server as well. Not set up to support Windows 7 or earlier. So the enterprise level configuration, yes, you can deploy it to Windows 7 with some extra pieces on the Windows 7 client. This wizard will allow you to do it for Windows 8 and Windows 10 clients. Once we get it set up, we can use the dashboard to monitor it. The slide here is just talking about the advanced options. If you're not using the wizard, these are the things that you'll be able to do. And oftentimes the wizard is the way we get the demo set up. And then once we decide, hey, this is something we want to use, then we can go in and build the infrastructure with our own certificate server, build redundancy in there with highly available servers, set up our network the way we want it. So there's a dashboard, shows you who's connected, how they got connected, and where they came from, all that information about the connection piece, the status of all the clients and all of the components, and the reporting tool, which is very valuable to be able to report who connected when, and any problems that were involved. So as you're doing your demo, the reporting tool will give you the feedback that you need when you have management meetings about how the process of this demo worked out. Basic troubleshooting, network troubleshooting. You don't always know where they are in the network they're coming from, but because you can connect to them when they're connected, you can look at issues that are going on their computers as well. If they're not connected, there's a little bit of information in the reporting saying the connection failed, but it doesn't always tell you about the configuration on the machine. So standard command line tools, for checking network out. Yeah, the reporting, the book talks about how many sessions per day, maximum sessions, concurrent sessions, how many you had, and the statistics on the server. So obviously you want to make sure they have the right operating system, which would be done prior to the deployment, I'm sure. They have to be domain joined. They have to be in the right security group that you've approved for this direct access. Group policy troubleshooting, basic group policy troubleshooting. You see the group policy was applied. IP6 is working if that's your connection. And the ability to have IP6 connection to all of the intranet DNS servers. The network location, the name resolution policy table is the piece that tells you where you are. And if that's not working properly, the configuration is done through the wizard, but you have to check that out and make sure that that's recognizing where you are. There should be, in the configuration, there should be no way for an internet machine to be able to connect to the network location server. Pretty simple to do, but that is a concern, because if you're on the internet and you can connect to that server, you are getting through the corporate network, but not through direct access. All right, and then lastly, some of the net shell commands that are there, looking at the various tunneling procedures like Teredo tunneling or the HTTPS tunneling, and looking at the policies we're following, the name resolution policy table policies. All right, so that's direct access, and we can look at VPN.